Alright, you duelist enthusiasts and card flapping gurus, welcome back to the kingdom. I am once again your Cicerone, King Shy, and what we're going to do here today is just dive into another fresh deck profile here for you guys, and it's going to be Machina R.B. Now, with Machina R.B, they have had a few things kind of added, specifically in Blazing Dominion, that really kind of helped out the deck, and that's for machines all just across the board, like lots of machine stuff. Notice for the mat, we got a few, we got a machine theme. We got a machine theme, guys. And what I'm actually going to do here for you guys as we, do more of these deck reveals and deck lists, I'm really going to try to have a mat that kind of also goes along with the theme. And, if you guys noticed in the last one, it was more kind of, it was the Exodia Paris mat. If you didn't know, if you know, good job. Well, what we're going to do from now on is just, make sure that, we try to have a little continuity there, little tidbits there. I'm actually a big mat collector myself, guys, so, got a few of them to show off for you guys. But without further interruption, we're going to go ahead and dive right into the deck list here. And we are going to start with 3 copies of Machina Gear Frame. Now, Gear Frame has a lot of great capabilities, of course. Gear Frame is pretty much going to be one of your starters. What I love about these types of decks is that they have a lot of different one-card starters. So it's pretty much all engine, which is really nice for making sure you can get to your place. Whether you get hand-trapped along the way, doesn't really hurt you too much unless you only started with 1 or 2 starters. But there's enough starters in here to where you'll feel pretty confident most of the time, whether going first or second, which is really good, especially in a board breaker format. So, definitely 3 Machina Gear Frame to start with, of course. Then, just to continue the Machina lineup here, we got 2 Fortress. In my opinion, just constantly slept on. Fortress is so good because if it gets targeted, you're going to go ahead and make sure you're going to get something there. If it gets destroyed, you're going to get something there. So it's just like, yeah, Fortress. Yeah, any machine deck you run should have at least 1 Fortress in it, in my opinion. I've been running machines for a very long time. That was actually my favorite type of archetype. So, yeah, like Machina Fortress, just hands down probably going to be one of your best ones. Then, of course, we have the Citadel. Now, Machina Citadel, just when it comes to the RB setup specifically, is going to get its effect off more often and even in just a plain Machina deck, which is really nice. And because its effect is off battle or card effect, you're able to make sure you can get its effect off more constantly. So it works really, really well, honestly. Then, moving right along, we have Unclass Bar. Now, this is one I was actually trying for a while. I didn't actually like the Dark Machina monsters with this one, and I think it's like the Ravensburn, something like that. Either way, but I didn't like that. I didn't like the 2 of them when they got added to the archetype initially, but this one really, really grew on me with the way you can kind of combo it with Citadel, you can combo it with Fortress, and it really gets you to your next plays really, really nice and really smooth. So yeah, definitely Unclass Bar, fantastic. You should use, yeah. And that's gonna round out the Machina setup there. Now we're gonna dive into the RB side of the deck, and that's gonna be with 2 copies of RB Driller. RB Driller is the pop of the group. So it's gonna, destroy something your opponent controls. So how the RBs work is they work by either being connected to or pointed at, essentially, by an RB Link monster. So the 3 RB Link monsters, of course, we'll get into those here in a minute, but they're gonna be Brood Blues, Booster, and Crook. How the main monsters work is that their effects will all go off by being pointed at you by one of those. And because of that, their effects feel like they have an extra hoop to get through, but everything in the RB deck just really runs smooth. If you've noticed, more recently, the RBs have been kind of stepping back into the meta. They didn't really lose too much steam with the release of some of the later archetypes, but they weren't really one that people were really taking very seriously, which is why in Genesis they're doing better. But with also, a release of a couple staples, and with us now moving to more board breaker format, I really think that they're really going to come up here, which is also why I felt like now's the time. If you haven't already, go pick up a core for RBs, because it's going to be a time for them. But we'll start with 2 driller here, like I said, and then we'll move on here to 2 copies. Let's do 2 copies of Cutter. So Cutter is actually my second favorite R.B. monster, period, because I absolutely can't stand spell traps when they're going off of my opponent. With there being so many different baits out there for things, I stopped this, and that didn't stop my opponent's turn, which is also why, once again, board breaker meta versus hand trap realm, as we call it here. What's really nice about the initial run of the RB monsters is that each one of them special summons themselves to the board, and as long as you either control just RB monsters or no monsters at all, so they kind of work similar to Cyber Dragon, which also goes with the theme of the mat. So what really makes them all unique is the fact that each one of them is going to do something different when they're connected. So with Driller, like I said, pops monsters. With Cutter negates spell traps, which is really nice. The next one we're going to go into is Power Bunker. There we go. Power Bunker is going to be the kind of board breaker with Brute Blues. It's more so going to be that extender that's going to help get you to your initial play, which is really great because, like I said, you have so many different starters there. Each one of the ones that special summon themselves can be considered a extender to a starter, which is also really nice as well. So if any time along the way something gets negated or stopped, then you still have them to kind of continue on with the plays if you need to. And it was going to be a combo video. It's going to follow this one up here as well, so make sure you stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you can go ahead and stay up to date with what's going on. Moving on, though, we have Rocket here as well, Vulcan Rocket. So Vulcan Rocket is another one of the ones from the initial run here. It's going to special itself to the board. Make sure it acts as an extender. It's going to pop 2 cards your opponent controls and then also burn them on top of that. And you get burned a little bit too, but with the RB stuff, you're going to get life back constantly with the field spell and with next phase as well, which we'll get into here in a bit. But yeah, the Vulcan, fantastic. It's going to be another one that's going to help break boards. So this deck just constantly pops and just constantly goes off. Now, some of my favorite ones are coming up now. This guy is fantastic. So I find it funny how with the cool tunes that have come out and have really blown up, you know, they have one and people are like, oh, you can look at your opponent's hand. And I'm just like, yeah, but RB does that mid combo though, like, and then continue on, like, it's crazy. So you have Cannon, who just pops itself, takes a look at your opponent's hand, brings out a monster. So you can essentially turn off a lot of cards that say, hey, if your opponent has cards and you don't, i.e. impermanence, and negate its effects. Yes, please. So whatever starter, whatever 1-card starter, 2-card starters, or whatever that they had in their hand, you're gonna just automatically just pluck one out, put it on the board in front of them. They can't do anything with it because its effect is negated, and it's your turn. And on top of that, you got to take a look at their entire hand to get a good idea of, you know, what could be coming on their next turn as well. So just fantastic. Just cannon. So good. So good. Next, we have Lambda Blade. Now, Lambda Blade was that one that when it came out, I personally wasn't a big fan of it, to be honest. The issue that I ran into when it came to Lambda is that I didn't put the numbers together. Like, the numbers weren't numbering to me. They didn't click right. So when I first started using it, I ran into issues and I was just like, I'm not liking how this card feels. Where I turned a corner with it was when I used Cannon right beforehand. I used Funk Doc to bring out Lambda Blade, snatched the monster on their next turn, and with me popping the Lambda Blade also then brought out the Cutter from my deck to negate a spell that I knew that they were going to use. So, just complete side note, this deck, and specifically Cannon and Lambda, really help hard stop a lot of decks that rely on things that they have on the board, things like Vanquish Soul, things like K9. It really just freezes those decks because of how hard they rely on the one monster they have on the board. Even something like Ryzeal, you know, just it might be stepping back in the meta soon. You know, with the Blitzclick stuff coming up, we'll see. But this is a good pseudo answer to a lot of the stuff that they're going to do if you go first. This is a very much if you go first situation for that. But you know, you have side deck cards and board breakers that are really going to help you continue on with your plays anyway. So fantastic. Lambda Blade, definitely a plus. And like I said, it just took me some time to learn. All of these combos and things, guys, they're going to take a little bit of time to learn. Don't get discouraged. It really is just a matter of, you know, keeping up with the reps, keeping up with play testing and stuff like that. Whenever you try any list that you are looking at, including mine, do not hesitate to be like, you know what, I like this, I don't like that, and make it your own. Like, don't just cut and paste and net deck, because that person's thought process may not be your thought process. But either way, total side note, that was, you know, just me kind of run off on a bit of a tangent, but we'll just continue on here. So we have one copy of Therian King. So once again, we got a king in the deck. It's king, and I have kings. I don't know, guys. It's just what I do. I crown people. I got kings. But in any machine deck, he's absolutely staple. At least at one, for a deck like this where you're going to be specialing stuff and then throwing stuff in the grave constantly, he's fantastic for bringing up something just as another negator. So definitely a copy of him. And then we get into another staple here, which we all know her. We all love her. And she is fantastic. But that is the Ash of Blossoms there. Like, every time I talk about her, I just smile on the inside and the outside. She's just, she's so good. And of course, like, you know, she is that card that even outside of the hand trap realm, she's still going to be used. She was the original one, guys. Actually, it's either her or Ghoststoker, but she was the better of the two either way, in my personal opinion. Like, Ghoststoker, great. You know, you take a card off the board, fantastic. But she just said, oh, I don't care how many resources you use to search. You're not getting that card. Your whole combo, you thought you were going to go through? Yeah. She's the no-crossing guard. So, yeah, fantastic. Absolutely love it. But that's going to be it for the monsters, guys. We're going to go ahead and dive into the spells. And speaking of kings and crowns, we have the triple of it. And yes, to me, this card is staple, and it must be played in threes. Now, I know it is expensive, and honestly, I've been scouring, guys. I have tried to find a card that can really match what this does. And I really had to sit down with one of my friends the other day, and I was like, I don't think there's anything out there that can do what this does. You have it split amongst like 5 different cards, which makes sense. It has 6 effects. But it's just like, there really isn't anything. Like, at all? Just, no? I guess. I suppose. Then we'll continue on here. So this is going to kind of throw things off a little bit for some, because I didn't put it in the name here. But you do earn 3 Sky Striker, Mobilize, Engage. So Engage is fantastic as a helpful 1-card starter, because it's essentially going to be that card that you're going to help bait most of the time. If it walks, fantastic. If it doesn't, you still have other starters, which is the best part about this deck. Like I said, it is mainly engine, but once your engine gets going, it's very difficult for your opponent to overcome it. We're just going to go ahead and go with the card next that's going to go with Mobilized Engage, which is the Hornet Drones there. Hornet Drones, of course, being at 1. I've actually tried this deck with Hornet Drones and Afterburner, Hornet Drones and Widow Anchor, Hornet Drones, Eagle Booster. The problem with all of those other cards is they rely too heavily on what Sky Striker wants to do, and this deck is not Sky Striker. That's why I said this is going to throw you off a little bit. This is not that kind of party. So with Hornet Drones being a 1-of, it is the thing you're going to search. And if you draw into it, if you hard draw it on your first turn, or if you hard draw it before you get an Engage, it does make Engage a dead card in the deck. This is true. However, what's going to happen most of the time is you're still going to get to your combo. You're still going to search out all your stuff, and you're going to continue to just steamroll. So most of the time, you actually don't care. So, yeah, still just the 1-of, and I know it sounds weird, but my suggestion whenever something sounds weird is to try it before you buy it. See if you try it, try it online, try it out on, EDO or on Master Duel or what have you. But continuing along here, we have a new card that came out in Blazing that really helped this deck and really influenced what we were going to do with this video, and that is Exceptional Schedule. Now, Exceptional Schedule is probably one of the best machine cards that I've seen come out in a long time. Like it surprised me because when it first got announced, I was just like, this seems good on paper, right? But how good is it actually? And so I tried it. And I tried it at 1, and I drew it at 1, and it worked at 1. So I tried it at 2, and I drew it at 2, and it worked at 2. So then I was just like, wait, let me just try 3. Let's see how this goes. Just got to give you guys a little bit of insight as to my process, right? And when I tried 3 and it became way more consistent with me getting it in my first hand and me actually going off with it more often than not, I was like, yeah. It works almost identical to how Engage works. And with Engage being a 1-card starter, with Exceptional being a 1-card starter, with Machina Gear Frame being a 1-card starter, like I said, you have multiple starters on top of the main starter we didn't even get to yet. We didn't even get to the main starter of all of this. But this is what I'm saying. Like, this deck is bananas. So then we're just gonna continue on. Exceptional Schedule, fantastic. But then if you're gonna run Exceptional, you gotta be Urgent as well. Because, you always wanna be on time. Shout out to Destiny. Now here's the thing. Urgent Schedule was always one of my favorite machine cards. And I was bigger into Machina and Cyber Dragon than I was into like any of the other machine archetypes, like except for like Jinzo and stuff like that from like back in the day. I kind of got into Infinitrack a little bit. Like, I've tested out most machine archetypes, and actually the only one I really haven't gotten into, to be honest with you guys, is Enneacraft. Some of the stuff in here might work in there. Like, who knows? We'll see. But you have Urgent Schedule that just, bar none, when it comes to the R.B setup, is going to get you set up every time. So with the Exceptional going into the Urgent, going into the booster, which then gets you like you everything just steamrolls. So yeah, Exceptional and Urgent Schedule, you just fantastic, both of them. So now we're going to get to the main starter here, which is Stage Landing. Stage Landing is the main RB card that when RBs were first released made people look twice. Not only does it get you an RB monster from the main deck or the extra, their effects aren't negated, and it's not at once per turn. So if you're ever wondering, like, hey, why are people talking about the Stage Landing card? Like, what's so crazy about it? My friend, amigo, this is crazy, actually. And then on top of that, it also has built-in protection. So you're going to search, you're going to special, you're going to get your effect off. And if any RB monsters were going to get destroyed, which, i.e., once again, Board Breaker Realm, you just banish this off instead. And they also pop themselves for their own effects, which is really interesting because some of them you have to pop, then they get their effect. Others, you pop and get their effect. Now, this is where one of those clause things in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or their wording becomes very specific, and why a lot of people kind of get headaches when they deal with certain cards, because they're like, wait, is that an and, an or a then? And all of those things are very good questions, because they're going to change how and why that card works as well or as terrible as it does. Let's take Driller and Cutter, for example. Driller says you pop this and a monster your opponent controls. Cutter says you pop, then negate. So Stage Landing could save your Driller and pop your opponent's monster. But Cutter cannot be saved by Stage Landing and negate. They did a good job of, kind of having a mixture of which ones do what. But yeah, no, Stage Landing, enough said. Stage Landing is amazing. So next up, we have the other 1-card starter here as well, which is going to be Funk Doc. So Funk Doc is really interesting as a field spell. This deck took a lot of convincing for me early on. Like I said, I try out all machine decks. Machines to me have been always very like mid-tier strong, but we have great effects. That's why they got limiter removal as a thing in the first place. So, I was very on the fence with this. So I did try to do my best to make sure to get the deck to where I wanted it to go, make sure that I understood how the different combo lines could end up, and even took extra steps to fully ensure that I could get a full or close to full combo off as often as possible. Moving on here, we have, of course, the One Clockwork Knight. Now, this is very much an if you know type combo, but essentially, starts off, you bring out the Clockwork Knight Link after you've used the RB Continuous, and you pop the Continuous, get the Clockwork, and get the Continuous back. It's a whole little like circle thing that kind of goes on, which is really nice. It's really cool. It's cute. It's something that I have in there. I don't really do this one too often because for me, it's not as needed to make sure that I can go off, especially with the addition of Exceptional Schedule now. You need this less and less. So this is actually one of the cards that might be on my chopping block, but for now it's still in there because it's a combo I'm comfortable with. But still may end up coming out. But now we'll get into more of the staple side here. Of course, we have Regeki. Now, once again, Board Breaker Realm, guys. I can't say it enough. It's just going to make more sense now. You're going to have those people who are still going to run 12, 15 hand traps. And that's fine. More often than not, those hand traps are going to be outshined by the fact that their board gets snapped in two. Like, those hand traps are all great until your opponent goes, I'm going to Regeki. You go, I negate, and they go, cool, I'm going to Illusion Gate, or I'm going to Lightning Storm, or I'm going to Dark Hole, or I'm going to just Kaiju you. Like, there are so many different ones out there now that just absolutely make this new era a very different game than what we've been used to over the years. But yeah, so we'll start there with one Regeki. Then, of course, we have, following that up, like I just said, the Illusion Gate. It's just going to be like a secondary Regeki, essentially. That's a little bit better. It does, of course, cost half your life, but in this type of deck, you kind of care, kind of don't, because Funk Doc's going to continue to get you life as your RBs are getting popped, and as you're popping your opponent's monsters and things of that nature. On top of that, you have Next Phase, which is going to get you an extra 2,000 life points as well. So you're going to have things that are going to get you life back. So this one doesn't hurt as much as it does in other decks. So it's good to kind of have that here as well. Moving along here, of course, we got the one called By the Grave. So clutch. Because you still are going to run into those pesky hand traps here and there, those K9 rogue decks or Mitsurugis, like, yes, Called By is just your best friend. It is. When you have it, you just feel so secure. You're just like, oh, I have Called By? Yeah, we'll be fine. We're going to get through this turn and it's going to be all right. Like, it's just, Called By is so good. Called By is so good. So continuing on with the RB line here, we have one RB operations test. Essentially their version of, I guess you could say, premature burial? I guess, shrug. It really goes to what the deck continues to want to do regarding recycling, even the whole bouncing back to hand effect to special another one or to special the same one. You get life back. Like I said before, with the whole Illusion Gate setup, you just feel like you don't lose as much because of the fact that you're going to get so much back. So definitely a plus here with that. So that there rounds up all the spells. Then we have a couple traps here, literally a couple of traps. We're going to start here with RB Last Stand. So Last Stand is just going to act as just a quick extender, quick recruiter. It even has a graveyard effect that banishes off to negate an effect that goes against one of the RBs. So it's really a full package card, which is really nice. And it didn't seem that great initially. It is really, really good though if you can either pitch it, or let's say you didn't draw the greatest hand, but you still got some stuff off. You can still set it down, pull out your Lambda. Lambda's going to go ahead and send another RB card to grave, which Lambda can send this, which is really good too. So there's a couple different ways you can kind of do it, because Lambda acts both as a Snatch Steal and as a Foolish Burial. Lambda Blade, like I said, like my initial setup with the card was like, it's mid, and then the more I used them, I was like, oh, this card is busted. So continuing on here is RB Next Phase. So Next Phase is going to round out the deck there. It's just the counter trap that's going to pretty much shut down a chain, which is really nice. Unless your opponent has Accusation on board, essentially, the Next Phase is going to walk more often than not. So you're going to negate something that they have. You're going to gain 2,000 life from it. And then on top of that, because it got popped, Funk Doc gives you some life points too. So you have a couple different like synergistic things to keep getting life points up and keep things kind of rolling with the deck. You feel like a Transformer. Remember I seen in one of those Transformers movies where, you have all of these things kind of get together. It's kind of like you're making Captain Planet. Like, Brute Blues is the machine Captain Planet. That's what it is. That's what he is. And then on top of that, he just gets even better and even stronger the more you got connected to him. So he's just great. Speaking of that, we're going to get to the extra deck here, starting with 2 copies of that guy. Yeah. 2 copies of the Brute that is blue. So Brute Blues is so good. So first, he's going to get you any RB card you want from the deck, which is why if you start with Stage Landing, you activate it, you get him the board, he then gets you the Funk Dock, which you activate, and Funk Dock gets you another Stage Landing, which you activate. So many things going on. So I am going to do a combo video, but I did at least want to say that about him, because Brute Blues is so good. He's just a force. He's both your starter and your ender, because if your opponent ends their turn and they're staring him down, they know that next turn they're in trouble. So yeah, he's fantastic. Fantastic. On top of the fact, with crown being a thing as well, you can crown one of the ones that's connected to him, and he then also can't be destroyed. They're like anchoring him there. So crown becomes, once again, offensive and defensive, guys. So there you go. Crown, still one of my favorite new cards out of the set. Anyway, continuing on here, we got 2 copies of Vulcan Booster. So Booster, another fantastic starter. Booster is actually the main starter you're going to go to most of the time if you don't have Stage Lander to start. So the reason why you have all those other 1-card starters is to get 2 machines on board just to make this, because it's a generic 2 machines, and this pulls one of the RB monsters back. Plus, it also gets an RB spell from the deck, so you're going to pull out the Stage Landing anyway and just go in from there. So yeah, it's so good. So good. Moving right along here, just to end out those 3, it's gonna be Shepherd's Crook. When Crook first got announced, I think I shed a tear. I really do. I think one came down like Will Smith style, because this card just chef's kissed the whole deck. Brute Blues is the GOAT. That is the Muhammad Ali. But if that's Muhammad Ali, then this dude is Don King. He comes in and is like, look, I'm here to help. And actually, I don't think that's even the right comparison. But either way, you got the best promoter and the best fighter of all times. This is how that feels. You know what? The better comparison. You got Shaq and Kobe. There you go. You got Shaq and Kobe in the deck. And Crook and Brute Blues. Because Brute Blues is going to do everything you need. Everything you need from a card, it does. Right? Crook, it's just like, hey, I'm here to back you up, buddy. I'll grab a trap for you. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you do. I'm just here to help. like, oh, by the way, you need other support? Don't worry. On your opponent's turn, I got you, bro. I'm gonna call some friends. Like, that's what it does. Like, you pull 3 back from grave that have levels. You put 2 back on the bottom and you bring 1 to the board. So it's just, they're very difficult to get rid of. Very difficult. Like, oh man. But yeah, Crook, fantastic. Then we're gonna get the Sky Striker Ace lineup, starting with Kagari. So Kagari is just gonna be that the card that's gonna be part of your 1-card starter setup. So it really is just kind of enough said when it comes to it, because you start with the Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones is going to get you the token gets you Kagari gets you back the Hornet Drones. Use Kagari to link summon to something else, and then you use the Hornet Drones again to bring out something else, and it turns into you having 2 machines on board from 1 Hornet Drones. This is also why having soft once per turn cards, or cards that don't say they're once per turn, are crazy. So we'll just run through the rest of the Sky Striker line real quick. So you have Kagari, you have Shizuku, right? Shizuku, just the water one, just the one that's going to point back to whichever one is going to be there, which will likely, honestly, be the Hayate. The Hayate will likely be the one that you run back to off of the Kagari. So you'll probably go Kagari, get my spell back, Hayate over Kagari, drop the Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones goes into Shizuku, and then you go into Booster, get your spell, go off. It seems like a bit of the ring around the rosy, but it's not. It's very simple, and actually, like I said in a combo video, I'm going to go into that. The reason why I'm kind of giving you guys little tidbits now is because I'm also going to be doing an unboxing for Chaos Origins. So rather than you guys just kind of waiting for the new video, I wanted to kind of give a couple of little tidbits there. But if you want to wait for the new video, that's totally fine. I'm definitely going to go into more in depth of how those combos work. So this is actually what I'm trying out. It is Camellia. So I'm not 100% sold on. And like I said, like I can become sold very easily, very quickly on a card. But you know, it just kind of has to work for me first. I'm trying to find those situations where it's like, hey, this makes more sense to go into than Valken Booster. But this feels more like a go second card, not as much a go first, unless I'm running mainly Sky Striker. It just is a very weird setup, but I'm interested to try it out. Next here we have Double-Headed Anger Knuckle. So Double-Headed Anger Knuckle is a very interesting card, but it's a card that I have used a lot longer than most. So for me, I'm actually very comfortable with it. So when I saw how stage landing works, where it says, hey, you can only bring out machines that are 1500 or less from the extra for the rest of this turn, I immediately looked at this card and was like, yeah, you make sense. This works best in a full-blown train deck. However, with the Machina lineup, it works really well in here too. So definitely Anger Knuckle, definitely at least at one. And I say at least at one because you can run two. I wouldn't recommend running two, but you can if you run into that situation where this gets banished for some reason. But if it doesn't get banished, then you really don't need another one. Next is Steel Star Regulator. I haven't gone into this too often, but the times that I have, it actually has been really helpful to get me out of situations. It really feels like a pseudo Brute Blues if you need to swing for game because of the, the gain it's going to get, depending on if you use 5, 6, 7 or whatever. But it's more so just for the pop factor. This is good for that, for single targeting. So Regulator is going to be a solid card you can really use to really kind of round out what options you're going to have when it comes to stage landing, because more often than not, you're going to use stage landing on your first turn. And if somehow, some way, Brute Blues and Crook get locked out, then you still have something you can go into that can still be a bit of a fighter. Then, of course, we have the Clockwork Knight, that card that, like I said before, is going to be part of the Clockwork kind of package combo, where you would pop the operations test, you get the Clockwork Knight from the deck, you activate it, turn everything to a machine, which turning everything to a machine with the Clockwork Knight also, I didn't get into that earlier, that's actually really, really good, especially when you're going against decks that are very type specific. Actually, one of the decks that's coming out, Blitzclick, is very leaning hard on Thunder. If you control a Thunder monster, you can do X. Yeah, Clockwork Knight says everybody's a machine. So, last but not least, Typhon. One of the staples had to be there, guys. You had to know it was going to be that one. It wasn't going to be Little Knight, unfortunately, even though Little Knight kind of works here. The problem is, Little Knight doesn't give you enough utility, in my opinion. If you're in that situation where you're like, oh man, I just got my whole turn blown, well then Typhon's kind of like the pull the cord in a case of emergency kind of setup. But that's going to be the deck here, guys. Once again, if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button, to keep you up to date with what's going on in the channel here. It definitely helps me out. Would really love to hear from you guys in the comments. If you guys have any questions, thoughts, feelings, hopes, wishes, dreams, aspirations, anything like that here. Everything here is all well and great to see, but this is all meant to be a conversation too, guys. So I want to make sure that I'm being as helpful as the Cicerone I can be. But in the meantime, that's going to do it for us here today. I have been your Cicerone King Shy, and appreciate you guys. We'll catch you in the next one.